the dynasty you were never meant to see. What if everything you think you know about American wealth is only half the story? Usually, when people hear old money, they picture oil tycoons, retail giants, or the tech titans of Silicon Valley. When the conversation shifts to black wealth, it's dominated by a handful of celebrity moguls, and when Jewish success comes up, we tend to hear the same few famous surnames on repeat. But what if the most fascinating story of power, influence, and fortune lives right at the intersection of all three and has stayed under the radar by design? We aren't talking about flashy headlines or the Forbes richest list here. This is a story about families and individuals operating in the gray areas, navigating race, faith, culture, and capital all at the same time. Their money isn't always loud. Their influence isn't always front and center. Yet, their footprint on music, sports, media, literature, and global culture is impossible to ignore. These are the people who learned early on how to code switch between worlds, how to translate their identity into leverage, and how to turn a complex background into a competitive advantage. In America, society loves simple boxes. You're black or white, sacred or secular, old money or new money. But the individuals you are about to meet blow those boxes wide open. Some were born into a dual heritage. Others found it later in life. Some embraced faith as their calling. Others turned their pain into power. What connects them isn't just the money, it's the ability to build influence where nobody was looking, and to shape the culture without asking for anyone's permission. Over the next few chapters, we are stepping into a world that rarely gets any airtime. It is a space where spiritual conviction can double as cultural capital, where personal trauma can fuel global stardom, and where identity itself becomes a strategic asset. This isn't just a countdown of success stories. It is a deep dive into how unseen dynasties are constructed in modern America. Before we jump in, make sure you are subscribed to this channel, because you rarely hear stories told from this angle. And right now, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? If you are in the United States, type the number 1 in the comments. Europe, type 2. Africa, type 3. Asia or anywhere else in the world, type 4. Your answer might actually say more about this story than you realize. Wealth that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. Before we go any further, let's get one thing straight. Accurately ranking wealth in this world is next to impossible. The most serious fortunes are rarely public, rarely liquid, and almost never straightforward. They are buried inside trusts, family offices, private equity structures, and generational setups designed specifically to dodge the spotlight. In a lot of cases, the flashier the number, the less real power stands behind it. That is why this story isn't obsessed with exact net worth figures. For the people operating in this sphere, wealth works on multiple levels simultaneously. Sure, there is financial wealth, but there is also cultural wealth, spiritual wealth, and something way more valuable: access. Access to the rooms where the real decisions happen. Access to the audiences that shape public opinion. Access to the narratives that define what success even looks like. For many Black Jewish individuals, identity itself acts as a form of leverage. Living between communities forces you to have a deeper grasp of systems, language, and power dynamics. It sharpens your perception. It builds adaptability. It teaches you how to navigate complex situations in ways other people never have to learn. Over time, that adaptability turns into influence, and influence quietly compounds. Another reason these stories stay hidden is privacy. In both Black and Jewish traditions, there is a long-standing understanding that visibility can be dangerous. Wealth attracts attention. Attention attracts risk. So, the smartest players often choose discretion over display. Their success isn't measured by headlines, but by longevity, control, and the freedom to move without explaining themselves to anyone. Most importantly, for many people on this list, money was never the primary goal. It was about survival. It was about belonging. It was about meaning. The wealth was just a byproduct of mastering a world that wasn't built with them in mind. And once they mastered it, they didn't just pull up a chair to the table. They redesigned the table entirely. With that context in mind, we can start where this journey truly begins. not with the richest person on the list, but with one of the most transformed. The man who walked away from fame. At the start of his career, everything was lining up perfectly. The music was raw, the lyrics were sharp, and the industry was taking notice. Born Damian Jamal Black in Seattle, he grew up immersed in sound. Music wasn't just a hobby in his family, it was their language. His parents were rappers. His grandparents played alongside legends. A mainstream breakthrough felt like it was only a matter of time. As D Black, he was carving out a serious lane in hip-hop, getting recognized for his skill and authenticity. For most artists, this is the moment where you double down, sign the bigger deals, and chase the exposure. Instead, he did something almost unthinkable. Right when success was within grabbing distance, he walked away. What followed wasn't a rebrand. It was a complete dismantling of his life. Raised Muslim, then later Christian, he began a deep spiritual search that eventually led him to Orthodox Judaism. This wasn't a symbolic move or a PR stunt. It came with loss, sacrifice, and isolation. He stepped away from the industry, from the income, and from everything familiar, choosing a path that offered zero guarantees except for meaning. He moved his family into a tight-knit Orthodox community and eventually made Aliyah to Jerusalem. When he finally returned to music, it was under a new name, Nissim Black, and with a completely transformed mission. The sound still hit hard, but the message had shifted. His lyrics now carried faith, discipline, and identity, merging hip-hop with spirituality in a way the world had never seen before. You can't measure his wealth by the charts alone. It lives in his influence, in his ability to build cultural bridges, and in the rare talent of moving between worlds without losing himself. In an industry obsessed with clout, he chose conviction, and by doing that, he created a different kind of legacy, from broken childhood to owned identity. Laughter saved her life long before it made her famous. Born in South Central Los Angeles, her early years were defined by instability, abandonment, and the kind of trauma few people survive without scars. Her father left when she was still a toddler. Later, a devastating car accident left her mother with severe brain damage, turning what little sense of home she had into chaos almost overnight. By the time she was a kid, the system had taken over. Foster care became her reality, a revolving door of strange homes and constant uncertainty. For a lot of people, this is where the story ends. But for her, it became the pressure that forged her resilience. Comedy wasn't just entertainment, it was armor. Humor became the tool that helped her process the pain while keeping the world at a safe distance. For years, her Jewish heritage existed quietly in the background, fragmented and unexplored. Her father was an Eritrean Jew, but that lineage felt distant, almost unreal compared to the urgent need for survival. It wasn't until adulthood, after the fame had already arrived, that she began the journey back. Not out of curiosity, but out of a need to fully understand who she was. That journey led her across borders and through history, reconnecting with family, tradition, and faith. On her 40th birthday, she did something profoundly public and deeply personal. She held a bat mitzvah, openly claiming both sides of her identity without apology. It wasn't a performance, it was a declaration. By then, her success was undeniable. Breakout films, awards, sold-out tours, and best-selling books had already placed her among comedy's elite. But the real victory was internal. She didn't just escape her past, she integrated it. Wealth gave her security, but identity gave her power. And that power now walks with her into every room she enters. When fortune follows faith. Power, in its purest form, is discipline. And few stories demonstrate that better than the rise of a dominant athlete who learned that physical strength alone is never enough. Born in small-town Florida, his early life was marked by instability, loss, and constant moving. Basketball became his structure, the court became his order. Talent took care of the rest. Drafted straight out of high school, he exploded onto the professional stage with rare force. Awards followed immediately. All-star selections stacked up. The contracts got bigger every season. Over the course of his career, he earned well over $100 million, securing a level of financial freedom few people ever touch. By every external metric, he had won. But beneath the surface, another journey was unfolding. From a young age, he had been exposed to the idea that his lineage traced back to the ancient Israelites. What began as curiosity slowly turned into study. Study turned into practice. Practice turned into conviction. His trips to Israel stopped being symbolic. They became personal. After his NBA career wrapped up, instead of retreating into a comfortable retirement, he leaned deeper into transformation. He invested in an Israeli basketball team, eventually playing for and co-owning it. He immersed himself in the language, the law, and the tradition. And then, in a move that surprised a lot of people, he formally converted to Orthodox Judaism, taking on a Hebrew name that reflected a rebirth rather than just a rebrand. Today, his life bridges elite American sports and ancient spiritual discipline. Whether coaching, mentoring, or investing, he operates with the calm precision of someone who knows exactly who he is. His wealth gave him options. His faith gave him direction. And in a world obsessed with image, he chose alignment instead. Millions built one sentence at a time. Not every empire makes noise. Some are constructed in silence, brick by brick, in rooms far away from the cameras and the applause. Born in L.A., to a black father from the segregated South and a Jewish mother fleeing persecution in Eastern Europe, he grew up at a cultural intersection that shaped his view of America long before he ever tried to describe it. His parents' marriage was a protest in itself. Back in the 1950s, being an openly interracial couple invited real danger. That tension, that constant awareness of living in the contradictions became the lens through which he'd eventually tell stories that felt uncomfortably real. But success took its time. For years, he ground away as a computer programmer, writing code by day and crafting mysteries by night. Everything shifted when someone finally realized what he was sitting on. His complex background wasn't a liability, it was raw material. When his breakout novel hit the shelves, readers didn't just find a detective story. They found a mirror reflecting the race, class, power, and morality of America. The series took off. The books multiplied, and the audience locked in. Over the decades, he put out dozens of novels, essays, and screenplays. He sold millions of copies worldwide and saw his work hit the big screen, generating the kind of fortune few writers ever see. Yet the money was never the main event, the influence was. His characters operated in the moral gray zones most stories ignore, just like the life that sparked them. His wealth was built on patience and precision. No viral stunts, no shortcuts, just consistency, craft, and the guts to tell stories rooted in lived truth. In a culture obsessed with speed, he proved that depth still pays the best dividends, when legacy is the currency. Some families don't just participate in the culture, they define it. Long before branding was a buzzword, this dynasty was already shaping the sound and look of the highest levels of entertainment. At the center was a musical architect whose ear shifted the entire trajectory of modern pop culture, with a reach that spanned every genre and generation. From producing definitive records to guiding the careers of global icons, his mastery of collaboration turned creativity into an enterprise. The money followed naturally. Hundreds of millions flowed in, not from a single lucky hit, but from decades of staying relevant. His success wasn't an accident. It was engineered through discipline, curiosity, and an unmatched ability to spot potential before anyone else. Beside him stood a woman whose screen presence redefined cool for an entire era. Raised in a Jewish household, she brought intellect, elegance, and a quiet strength to a TV landscape that was still finding its voice. Their union wasn't just a celebrity match, it was a collision of cultures and values that sparked something entirely unique. Their kids grew up in this rarefied atmosphere, surrounded by art, debate, and high expectations. Identity was never simple. Belonging was something they had to negotiate. But instead of crumbling under that pressure, they sharpened themselves against it. Education was mandatory. Perspective was an asset. And storytelling became their shared language. One daughter would go on to build a career spanning acting, writing, producing, and directing, moving seamlessly between comedy and social commentary. She learned early how to navigate rooms where few people looked like her, drawing from both sides of her heritage to create work that felt grounded and smart. She didn't succeed because of her last name. She succeeded because preparation met opportunity. In this family, wealth wasn't just inherited, it was activated. Legacy wasn't something to guard, it was something to expand. And in doing so, they proved a powerful truth. When culture runs in your blood, influence becomes generational. When cool is an inherited asset. Some families pass down real estate, others pass down businesses. This one passed down something way harder to pin down: cultural gravity. Long before algorithms decided what was trendy, this bloodline embodied an effortless cool that you simply can't manufacture. It was lived, absorbed, and expressed naturally across generations. Both parents came from worlds shaped by dual heritage. Each carried Black and Jewish roots, and each understood what it meant to exist on the margins while influencing the mainstream. One reinvented rock music by channeling the past for a new era. The other became a symbol of authenticity and quiet rebellion on screen, captivating audiences without ever chasing their approval. Their rise in the late 20th century wasn't loud. It was magnetic. Style followed substance. Music and acting were extensions of their identity, not costumes. That authenticity translated into longevity, record sales, sold-out tours, and a reputation that aged better than any trend. Financial success chased their cultural dominance, not the other way around. Their child was born right into this spotlight, but legacy comes with weight. Growing up aware of two histories, two struggles, and two sets of creative expectations forced an early reckoning with identity. Instead of fighting it, she studied it. She learned how pain shapes beauty and how restraint can hit harder than excess. As an adult, she built a career across TV, film, fashion, and directing. She moved through Hollywood with sniper-like precision, choosing roles that built credibility rather than just chasing volume. Her presence became synonymous with modern elegance, proving that you don't need constant exposure to have influence. This family's wealth is diversified across music, film, fashion, and intellectual property. But their most valuable asset remains intangible. Cool, when it's rooted in authenticity, compounds quietly. And when it's inherited, refined, and respected, it becomes unstoppable. New money moves different. In the digital age, wealth doesn't wait for a permission slip. It moves fast, breaks the rules, and rewards those who understand attention better than the institutions do. This chapter belongs to the artists who rose from that chaos, turning unconventional starts into global dominance almost overnight. Their success represents a new financial reality where cultural fluency matters more than pedigree. She grew up surrounded by creativity, but her path was anything but traditional. Music didn't come through labels or gatekeepers. It traveled through the internet. His life was complex, controversial, and deeply human. But his work created generational value that outlasted him. His child inherited more than a name. She inherited questions, contradictions, and a dual cultural upbringing that demanded she define herself. Instead of hiding from that tension, she transformed it into art, building a career that honored both sides of her heritage while standing on her own 2 feet. New money doesn't look in the rearview mirror for validation. It learns, adapts, and reinvents. In these stories, wealth isn't the finish line. It's momentum. And once you master momentum, it's almost impossible to stop. The power of owning your story. At the end of the day, one truth stands above every number and every name. The most powerful form of wealth isn't cash, it's control of your own story. Across music, sports, literature, and media, the people we've looked at learned how to turn complexity into strength and identity into leverage. They didn't win by fitting neatly into society's boxes. They won by refusing to choose between worlds. Black and Jewish heritage became a lens, not a limit. Faith provided the ground. Culture provided the vision. Struggle built the resilience. Together, these elements formed a foundation strong enough to support an influence that outlived trends and headlines. Their paths reveal a deeper lesson about modern success. Real empires are built when influence is owned, not rented. When creativity leads to equity. When visibility turns into autonomy. And when personal truth becomes a strategic advantage rather than something to hide, these stories aren't about division or comparison. They're about synthesis, about building bridges between histories, communities, and futures. They remind us that lasting success doesn't come from erasing who you are, but from fully understanding and embracing it. If this series changed how you think about wealth, identity, and power, hit subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who values substance over noise. In the comments, type 1 if you watched until the end, or type 2 if one of these stories really stuck with you.